Another week, another must-win scenario for the BYU football program. How do the Cougars ensure a victory over the Cincinnati Bearcats? I've got a foolproof plan for it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. We're proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now America's #1 sports podcast network. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we preview BYU and Cincinnati. The Cougars looking to stay above the fray when it comes to the Big 12 title game race, and very well could find themselves, clinching that Big 12 title game appearance if things go their way this week, and we'll get into all of that. We're also going to talk with Tanner Wall, a guy who's up for a number of awards, and all of them well-deserved for everything he does both on and off the gridiron. We'll catch up with him in an exclusive conversation. Then we'll finish up today's show with your questions, as we often do on a Friday. It's a mailbag coming from our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and it's all brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticketing purchase. All right, so BYU and Cincinnati square off tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock Eastern time out there at Nippert Stadium, 6 o'clock Mountain time here in the state of Utah. And I, for one, am looking forward to this matchup because it screams to me, much like it has been for BYU against TCU last week, and much like it would be against UCF should something go crazy this week, a must-win scenario for the Cougars. Now, that can be panic-inducing, can cause you to have anxiety, a whole litany of different things, stress you out, all that type of stuff, and I get all that. But BYU has been in this exact scenario just a season ago, and they failed to capitalize on their opportunity to go to the Big 12 title game by keeping themselves above the fray when it came to tiebreaker scenarios and the like. BYU knows what they're up against going into this matchup against Cincinnati. It's no question that they know exactly what to expect, the pressure that's being heaped upon them. And I look at this as a major opportunity for the BYU Cougars. They know exactly what to expect from Cincinnati, and that is everything that Cincinnati can muster in this game. And if you want evidence of that, well, the past two games that Cincinnati has played, they obviously straddled a bye week in the middle of those two games. Losses, by the way, back-to-back, getting absolutely demolished in Salt Lake City by Utah, and then a bit of an upset last week. No, it was an upset by the Arizona Wildcats at Nippert Stadium. Well, they did not have two of their star players, at least one of them in the Utah game, and both of them in the Arizona game, those being star running back Evan Pryor, who has 478 yards, averaging 7.2 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns on the year. He's considered kind of be the home run back for the Cincinnati Bearcats. He's expected to return for this game against BYU. And then their deep threat. We talked with Jeff Carr earlier this week. He talked about Caleb Goodie, who missed the Arizona game. He has 20 receptions, 380 yards. That's an average of 19 yards per reception and 2 touchdowns. He can take the top off the defense, and BYU's got to be wary of that. That gives Cincinnati a lot more firepower than they have had for the past couple of games that they have dropped. The other thing that I'm interested to see about this BYU team is, can they go into Nippert Stadium and essentially take Cincinnati's crowd out of it right out of the chute? I look at the game plan in this game for BYU as being very simple. I hate to invoke the name of the University of Utah on this podcast because a lot of you loathe them with everything you've got, and I get that. But look at the game plan that Utah utilized against Cincinnati. Now, that was a home game for Utah. That is the difference in this circumstance. But Utah essentially said, hey, Cincinnati, you cannot hang with our offense. We're going to blast you with our offensive line. We're going to run the ball down your throat, and it's not even going to be a contest. And there were moments in that game that I felt like Cincinnati could have hung around against the Utes, but Brendan Sorsby, they forced the game onto his arm, and he failed to keep Cincinnati in the game with some of his throws. I fully expect BYU to come into this game and to expect them to absolutely plug as many holes as possible to make sure that Evan Pryor and Tawee Walker, who are the two kind of thunder and lightning combination at running back for Cincinnati, that they don't get going in this game, and also keep Brendan Sorsby from gashing them with the QB run game. I fully expect Cincinnati is going to want to go back to more of what they've done all season long and get back to a quick strike offense. I mentioned the fact that Evan Pryor, he's got his home run ability. He absolutely does. A guy like Caleb Goodie can take the top off of a defense. And I actually love Brendan Sorsby's game. He's got a live arm. He can really sling the ball all over the field. And that is going to cause issues for BYU's defense to contain all of that. I fully acknowledge that going up against a full-strength Cincinnati offense is going to be difficult for BYU's defense. But I've got faith that BYU, what they did a week ago against TCU, against another fairly high-powered offense, they've got one of the best wide receivers in the league in, who I think of, Eric McAllister. Also guys like Jack, who are really good wide receivers, much like what Cincinnati offers, and a pretty darn good quarterback who's got every ability to throw the ball all over the field. And what did BYU do? Oh, yeah, gave up 13 points. That is why I think this is a foolproof plan for BYU. Now, does every game play out the exact same way it played out against TCU? Absolutely not. And the difference is, once again, that BYU is the road team versus being the homestanding team in this circumstance. You can guarantee that Cincinnati is not happy about having dropped back-to-back games, essentially seeing their chances of playing in the Big 12 title game go up in smoke, and they want nothing more than to drag BYU into the mess that is the two-loss team kind of pack, I guess I should say, sitting there behind Texas Tech. BYU knows what they're up against in this game. They know what's at stake. They know exactly what Cincinnati is going to come out and do. But I think if BYU can go in to Nippert Stadium late night, as BYU is very accustomed to playing, albeit Eastern time versus Mountain time, they can go in, get a touchdown right out of the chute, and Greg Wrubell is fond of saying this, in the 60 games under Kalani Sitake that BYU has scored first in, you know what the record is? Oh, yes, it's 51-9. BYU gets out of the chute early in this game, maybe gets a big turnover on defense, and suddenly Cincinnati's like, crap, here it goes again. And essentially they may roll over and let you have your way with them in that circumstance. Is it going to be that easy? Probably not, but that is the dream scenario for how BYU needs to approach this game, because you can ill afford to have a loss here. Because if you do have a loss, and we have a bunch of 5-2 teams when it comes to the conference race, or actually 5-2, no, 6-2, excuse me, got that right, 6-2 teams sitting there as they're trying to fight for and jockey for position going to Arlington, Texas. BYU very well might find itself losing out to the likes of Utah, for example. There's all kinds of scenarios that play into this, but the thing that BYU needs to avoid is it needs to avoid finding itself in that scenario. And so long as they handle their business, there's no reason to think that the Cougars cannot get over the top and get the W on Cincinnati's home field. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's a huge opportunity staring BYU in the face. And the bigger point to be had here, as I pull up one other thing I wanted to talk about here, is that I think all of the players, I know that Bear Bachmeyer wasn't here last year, but the players around him saw exactly how quickly things slipped out of their control a season ago, and they have literally zero interest in losing out on that opportunity. Your rooting guide this weekend, funny enough, if you want to see BYU lock up a Big 12 title game berth, is to root for Utah to win, Arizona State to lose, and obviously BYU beat the Cincinnati Bearcats. It's in some ways that simple. There's other scenarios at play here for BYU, and I thought I had the link to the tiebreaker scenario, but I do not. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. We could be talking on our postcast edition tomorrow evening about BYU already having locked up their spot in Arlington, Texas. Me telling you guys, hey, make your reservations now and get out to Arlington and support the Cougars at AT&T Stadium. It's all there for the taking for BYU, and all they got to do, handle their business and hope that some results around them handle their business as well. But the other side of it is, I believe if BYU beats Cincinnati, there's no reason to think that coming back home for senior night, late night, probably Thanksgiving weekend against UCF, that BYU can't win that game and also punch their ticket right then and there as well. So everything we talked often for the last couple of weeks on this podcast for BYU is still there in front of them, and all they got to do is take care of their own business. All right, coming up next, a guy who's going to play a big role defensively for BYU is Tanner Wall. He has absolutely transformed himself into an absolute star for the BYU football program, considering where he came from as a walk-on wide receiver to now being what I would consider to be a fringe all Big 12 safety. It's a remarkable transformation for this young man, and he talks all about that, the awards he's up for as a former walk-on for BYU, and a whole lot more. And we'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. College football is obviously ongoing. All of us love it. I could be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's literally nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets to these events can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout, and that's just a small smattering of the issues you can have. That's part is I want you guys to use our friends over at Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. This is my favorite feature of all of them. What you see is what you pay with our friends over at Game Time. App makes it super simple. You can see exactly what your seat view is going to be right there in the app. As I mentioned, there are no extra fees being tacked on when you try and check out. They also have what they call zone deals. You pick where you want to sit, they pick the seats, and you save money along the way. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it like I do with our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply against the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for making the Locked On Podcast Network America's #1 sports podcast network, and for all your continued support of this venture. All right, so I had a chance earlier this week to be down at BYU football practice, as I do every single week, and got to talk to a guy that I've absolutely loved covering during his time at BYU, because it's just an absolutely remarkable story. If you know the background of Tanner Wall, he was a really, really phenomenal football player out in the DMV area near our nation's capital, and passed up on scholarship opportunities at other programs and decided, no, BYU is where my heart is. I want to be a BYU Cougar. Walked on with BYU as a wide receiver, mind you. Didn't really see much playing time at wide receiver. Didn't really see a path to playing on the field. Well, then he gets essentially the call from Ed Lamb to say, hey, you want to try safety out? He flips over to defense, and with some tutelage from Ed and ultimately more tutelage from Jay Hill as BYU's defensive coordinator, Tanner has become a mainstay on BYU's defense. And I'll just say it right now, he's going to be in consideration for all Big 12 honors. I truly believe that. This past weekend, a culmination of years and years of work, as he got his first career pick six in the win over TCU, and helped BYU's margin of victory look all the better with that pick six late in that contest against the Horned Frogs. And that's where we started this conversation. I wanted his reaction to his first career pick six. And here we go, one-on-one with Tanner Wall as he talks about his scoring at Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, no, it was a surreal feeling to just finally make it to the end zone and celebrate down there with the boys. But yeah, it's been a goal of mine for a long time during my career here. So it was great to finally make it happen.
Now, I think you told everybody it's the first time you scored since 2017. You were in high school.
Yeah, that was my senior year of high school. So it's been a minute since I've been in the end zone.
Yeah.
Scored in a few scrimmages here when I was playing wide out, but. And the last time in the game was a while ago.
Now, obviously, big win over TCU. I think it was, from at least my vantage point, your most complete game, top to bottom, as a team. What do you make of the win?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you as far as complete win across all phases. I think, the way we performed on offense, defense, special teams, like we did whatever we want offensively, right? We ran the ball well, we threw the ball well. Defensively, we, held them to, he was 10 of 23 passing, I think lowest passing yards in his career. So for us, like that was the kind of game that we were really shooting to go put out there on the field, and we did. And so it gives us a lot of confidence, I think, knowing like, hey, when we stick to the game plan and we execute, like we can win games and beat people who are good football teams. Like that was a good football team. Yeah. So to win the game the way that we did was big for us, and I want to carry that into this week.
There's been a lot of talk about style points and the CFP race and the like. From your vantage point, do you pay any attention to that whatsoever?
No, not really. I think the biggest thing for us is just a game at a time, just win. Yeah. And we know if we win, we're going to be in a great spot and exactly where, we need to be and want to be. So we don't have to worry about, vouching or praying for people to lose if we can just win our games, right? So we were in a similar situation last year and then we weren't able to control our own destiny. So we want to stay in that position where we can just keep winning our games and be where we need to be. But a lot of that stuff is great for TV and great for the people who aren't on the field, and it's a lot of hype and hoopla, but we just stay focused.
You talk about the lessons you guys learned last year. Do you feel like that's motivating this team?
Absolutely, yeah. I think all the guys who were on that team who are back this year know just kind of even though we did end the season with a great win and a statement win in a bowl game, like we had a bad taste in our mouth. So coming back this year, we know we got to do everything possible to continue to control our destiny and get to the Big 12 championship game and go win that.
Now, Cincinnati, another team that's driven by a pretty good quarterback. What do you make of the Bearcats?
Yeah, no, they're a great team. Just watching them on film, I think they're pretty balanced in between their run game and their pass game. They've got good backs, and I like the way they use their tight ends too in blocking. But yeah, Sorsby's a great quarterback. He's a great athlete too, so he's made a lot of good plays with his legs this year. And they've got good wideouts. Like, I like their personnel. So yeah, I think they've got a very balanced offense. Don't know a ton about their defense, but from that perspective, we got a lot of respect for this team and anticipate a great game.
Now, you obviously play that free safety spot, so you're kind of the last line of defense. How difficult is it to prepare for a quarterback like Sorsby, who can improvise with the best of them?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely adds an additional wrinkle, right, when you've got a real running threat at quarterback. It definitely contributes to something else you have to factor in, but I trust our coaches. I know Jay and the other coordinators are going to put together a scheme that's going to allow us to play fast and play physical and be exactly where we need to be.
Now, they have kind of a unique thing that they are the lowest time of possession team in all of FBS football right now. They just don't possess the ball, but they play very quickly. Is that difficult in a way, or is that actually intriguing to you?
I didn't know that, actually. Okay. But no, that's definitely intriguing. They're a fast, powered offense. We talked today about how they rely on big chunk plays, and I think that's probably why their time of possession is low, because they've got playmakers who make those big plays, and the drives are short, right? And you got 3-4 play drives, big plays. So yeah, obviously on our part defensively, we're going to do all we can to limit the big plays and keep them on the field, make them sustain those drives.
Last true road game of the season. What's the biggest difficulty in preparing for a road game?
I think it kind of depends environment to environment. This one for us, it's going to be great just because it's an 8 o'clock kick. We don't have to change our body clock or any of that too much. So this is kind of our bread and butter, those night games, and I think we'll be in a great spot. We'll handle the travel well. We're going out on Thursday, so we'll be adjusted and feel ready to go.
What is it about night games? Your record is absolutely incredible in night games.
I think it's just we're so used to it. It's a reps thing. Obviously the environment here at home is unbelievable to play those night games, but we're just so used to that schedule and knowing exactly how the day's going to go. And I know we have a lot of guys who continue to prepare and watch film still during the day on Saturday when we have those late games. So it's a great, we use the phrase, the hay's never in the barn, right? So we're always trying to find ways to prepare even up until game time.
Now, you're doing a lot of stuff off the field. There's a lot of honors you're up for this season. Is that distracting at all to you, or do you just embrace all of it?
No, I wouldn't say it's distracting. I think, something that Coach Hill harps on a lot is our pursuit of excellence across all pillars of our life makes us better football players. And, I firmly believe that reigns true. And I see that in my teammates as well, those that excel in the classroom and excel in their personal lives and those things that they do, their achievement in football tends to match that. So continue to focus on those things, but make sure that I'm devoting the right amount of time and focus to film and football and all that.
Is there one of those honors, if you were able to pick one you could win, is there one that you would be like, that's the one I want?
I'm not sure I could pinpoint a single one of them. I'm just grateful for the recognition, that I've received across a number of different awards and organizations. I think the Burlsworth Trophy, honestly, too, being, the most prolific or the most recognized walk-on or player in the country who started his career as a walk-on would be an amazing honor. Yeah. And because to think about the number of stories there are across the country of just amazing players, I think that would be an amazing honor.
Last thing from me is, as you think back on your time at BYU, just how gratifying is it you're at this level now?
Yeah, I'm so grateful. Like, just thank my Heavenly Father every day for this journey and for every step of the way, and how He's blessed me and helped me to grow throughout this entire process. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's a dream come true. Like, it comes true every day. I get to come out here and practice and play the game I love and make plays in that stadium that I grew up dreaming about playing in. So just so much gratitude for the people and for the atmosphere, the environment, the coaches, just all of the above.
Well, Tanner, thanks for the time, man.
Thank you so much.
A big thank you to Tanner Wall for taking the time to join us here on Locked On Cougars. And a big thank you to BYU Athletic Communications for taking the time to arrange it. And you can tell he is very, very hopeful of winning some of these awards. He's up for all kinds of stuff. The work he does with BYU Pathway, which is an internationally recognized program to help those around the world get college educations, is absolutely incredible. Doesn't hurt the fact that this is a kid who is up for the Burlsworth Award, as he talks about, the Jason Whitten Man of the Year Award in college football. Tanner Wall is just the perfect example of what BYU football is and should be about. And that may sound elitist, that may sound over the top, but really, who doesn't want Tanner Wall to succeed at a high level? He is absolutely remarkable. This is a kid who's married. He's got ambitions beyond football, but he wants to play football as long as he possibly can. I absolutely love this story that Tanner Wall has put out on the field, and hoping that he has a big role tomorrow in a win over the Cincinnati Bearcats. And we'll get to my score prediction coming up next, because I'm sure many of you are, hey, what are you thinking, Jake? I've already kind of spilled the beans on a couple other podcasts I've done this week, so if you've been paying attention, you already know what I'm probably going to go with. But we'll get to that. We're also going to get to your guys' questions, a lot of football and basketball related questions, some holiday questions as well, as you get ready for Thanksgiving, just over a week, under a week away now. Crazy. It's 6 days away. Crazy enough. Turkey Day is almost here. We'll get to all of that as we continue on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, as they are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you missed the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand of the game you're watching, FanDuel has live bets on everything who will score next, to fourth quarter comebacks, and quite literally anything else in between. Even if basketball's not your thing, they got football, they got baseball. They've got it all for you guys with our friends at FanDuel. Plus, you can combine those live bets you may be watching in that game into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout along the way. Keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push along the way. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's simple as that. Put $5 down. If it hits, you get $300 to play around with our friends over at FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with our friends over at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And I want to encourage you guys, if you've not done so already, sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get an opportunity to ask me questions. Got some new perks going to be rolling out here in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. Those of you who are already in the Insider Group, and if you want to get in on it, $5 a month to be a part of the group right now. You get a 2-week free trial if you sign up today. Click the link in the show notes below and join us in the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, I'll get it right out of the way right now. A few of you have asked in the Insider Group and the Q&A, Jake, what's your prediction for this week? Well, I said it on Locked On College Football. I did a college football addiction with TJ Pittenger earlier this week as well. I think the scoreline that Arizona put up against Cincinnati is kind of where I'm sitting on this game. I believe BYU is going to put up 31 points and Cincinnati's going to have 23. I think 31-23 is my margin of victory. It's a 2.5-point spread. I think that's too low, but I also understand with the returning weapons, Caleb Goodie, Evan Pryor, that's why I think the homestanding Bearcats are getting a little extra nod in terms of maybe a little lower on the spread against BYU. But if you do the math, typically home teams get 3 points, 3 plus 2.5. That's about 5.5 points. I think BYU is a touchdown better than Cincinnati. So give me 31-23 BYU, and I welcome your predictions. Put them in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube, reach out on social media or send us an email. Let us know what you think of this matchup against the Bearcats. All right, so before we go, as we often do on a Friday, I want to finish up the show with your guys' questions. I threw it out to our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and they often do, responded in mass with a lot of good thoughts on this. And I'm going to start off with one that I kind of a question more about the business that I'm in, podcasting and sports radio and the like. And it comes from David. And it actually made me chuckle because I don't think he's alone in either thinking or wondering this, but he was willing to ask the question. He said this, Jake, can you tell me why so many podcasts and other content creators out there talk so much about BYU? Is it because BYU gets them clicks? Well, yeah, that's the answer right there. You answered your own question, David. BYU fans, and I respect y'all immensely. There are thousands, if not millions of you, literally both here in the state of Utah, the greater United States, even around the world, who check out literally everything. I mean, everything that BYU content creators, official media outlets, the official school outlets, they all put it out there. And guess what? It all gets clicks. Yes, BYU fans are good for business. That's why guys like Drake Toll, there's people that say he does a secondary Locked On BYU show because it's Locked On Big 12. But it's because Drake knows the Cougar fans are going to click on it and they're going to consume it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing with this podcast. I appreciate any and all of you who consume this content. So you answered your question, David. BYU is good for business for anybody. And I don't, I tried to mix two words there. I don't fault anybody for talking about BYU because once again, it is going to get you eyeballs on your product. And that's a great thing because Cougar fans, y'all are diehards. I absolutely love it. So thank you for your support of this podcast. And I'm just going to speak for other content creators, podcasters, radio hosts, and the like out there. Thank you for consuming all of our content. So it really does. I think you answered your question with your question, if that makes sense. All right, next question comes to Tate. If BYU wins out and so does Notre Dame, do you think it's possible for the committee to swap them because BYU won 11 games? I would like to think so, Tate, but I don't believe for a second they will do it. Notre Dame is a brand name, and there's some reason there's a fascination with this playoff committee about the Fighting Irish, and I see no way, no how that they will switch BYU and Notre Dame, even though I do think that BYU's resume is stronger than Notre Dame's. In fact, it's stronger than a handful of teams in front of them, but that's another point for another day. Preston, I'm excited for the Cincinnati game. What do you think the Cougs' chances are if we win out but losing the conference championship game of making the college football playoff? Well, we have a pretty brief history with the 12-team playoff. It was just the one season before this. But remember, SMU, who BYU had a head-to-head win over last year, went into the ACC title game, lost to Clemson, so thereby lost the automatic bid, but it didn't hurt them as they made the college football playoff as an at-large team. You got to hope that BYU gets that same type of treatment from the college football playoff committee, but at the same time, based on how they're kind of operating right now, I'm a bit wary of believing that's going to happen, Preston. Next one, Jared. BYU's defense seems to struggle most against the run. Obviously, that's Cincinnati's strength. Are you confident that Jay Hill can dial up something to slow down the run game? Well, he better, and they have to, honestly. If they cannot contain Cincinnati's run game, BYU very well may lose their second game of the season and do it at Nippert Stadium. They absolutely need to shut down the Cincinnati rushing attack. And Jay Hill, he's proven to be a very, very adept defensive coordinator, and I'm sure that he will have something planned out here for BYU. Braden's got a trio of questions here. Why does BYU win versus Texas Tech the second time in the conference championship, pending if BYU gets their 2 wins they need on their way to that? Well, I believe that BYU will have a whole nother idea of a game plan to attack Texas Tech. And I think it's more of what you saw from Arizona State, where Arizona State said, all right, we may take some sacks here, but we're throwing the ball down the field against the secondary against Texas Tech. That may be their weakness. I think BYU is going to have to do that same thing. You may have to go with 4 and 5 wide receiver sets, spread out Texas Tech, and chuck it deep. I'm telling you, it kind of goes against the ethos of what Aaron Roderick and BYU's offense has been for literally years now. But that may be the only way BYU wins that game. That's my personal opinion on the matter. I think the defense did its thing, and I do think they could hang with Texas Tech in the secondary game. Also, what are your thoughts on the Trapezoid of Excellence by Ryan Hammer? Now, the Trapezoid of Excellence, Ryan Hammer is a college basketball analyst. I have not seen what the Trapezoid of Excellence looks like so far for the basketball season, but I do think it's actually a pretty incredible thing. He puts these on a plot chart, and he draws a trapezoid around the top teams. More often than not, Ryan's proven to be pretty accurate with who the top dogs in college basketball are. And if you've seen that, Braden, maybe BYU's already in that mix. Maybe that's why you're asking, but I do think it's a valid analysis of college basketball. He finishes this up. Do you drink soda? And if so, are you a Coke, Dr. Pepper, or a Pepsi person? I'm a fan of Diet Coke myself. Well, Braden, I used to be a guy who eschewed drinking soda. Really, it wasn't something I did for quite a while. I've started to drink a little bit more recently. I don't consider myself to be like a soda-holic, if that makes sense. I'm not going to any of the dirty soda places around here in Utah because I don't really do drink that much. But if you ask me of those three, I'm a Dr. Pepper guy all the way. I'm a Pepper. I absolutely love Dr. Pepper, but I also married into a Diet Coke family. So I can respect where you're coming from. All right, next one. Bryce, have you heard anything on the Pula twins? Twitter seems to be a buzz about them. Well, them and Satawala being pursued by Utah, LOL. Okay, I don't know what's going on with the Pula twins. I have seen the smoke. I have heard all the rumors. I've had people reach out to me time and time again saying, hey, are Jaron and Kenan going to come to BYU? I got no idea, everybody. I'd love to have them in Provo because they're incredible football players, both at Timpview and now obviously at Lone Peak, come just a little bit short in that title game against Corner Canyon yesterday. I have no idea what they're going to do. I think they'd be incredible talents to have in Provo, but they're committed to Utah, and I will assume they're going to end up at Utah until they make a decision. Otherwise, and then the whole thing about Satawala, no idea, everybody. The college football carousel when it comes to the transfer portal, it's going to start spinning here pretty quick. Obviously, with the carousel really opening up January 2nd, that's when the window will open. It's the only window. Who knows what happens with BYU players? Money is out there, and BYU has money themselves. But players, they have their own motivations for why they may or may not leave. But I'd be hard-pressed to think that Falatau Satawala, who has become an absolute star under Jay Hill, is going to leave BYU at this juncture. That's personal opinion on the matter. Not reporting anything. Don't know anything for certain, but I'd be hard-pressed to think he's going to leave at this point. Jeff, what's up with Jovessa Demooney? Jeff, I wish I knew. If you have an answer, let me know, because I think he's in WITSEC, Witness Protection Program, because I have seen nothing from Jovessa, and I would like to see him on the field. I don't get why he's not seeing time. Personal opinion on the matter. Troy, how are your expectations for this football team evolved over the course of this season? What do they need to do now for you to consider this a successful season, for how you considered success going in August? Well, let's just put it this way. If they lose this game against Cincinnati, it's a failure. That sounds so harsh to say, but think about it. BYU loses this game to Cincinnati and somehow loses out on going to the Big 12 title game for the second straight year. That'd be a tough thing to absorb considering the season BYU has had to this point. Now, going into the season, I was like, okay, 8 wins, that'd be pretty good. And they're at 9-1 right now. Like, I'm gunning for 11-1. That's what I expect from BYU right now. They've got to make the Big 12 title game at this point. 8-4 wasn't a bad year, and I thought that was a pretty darn good thing going into the season. But how things have rolled out, yeah, losing to Cincinnati, what a major, major bummer that would be. So there you go. That's what I think on that. Caden, is there anyone who can point out to the College Football Playoff Committee that BYU has a better resume than Oregon and Notre Dame? Also, assuming that BYU wins on Saturday, which is better? Oregon beats USC and keeps USC out of contention, or USC beats Oregon and then bumps them out of the top 10? My fear is that USC would jump BYU for beating Oregon, and Oregon then just moved on to the 11th spot for a, quote, quality loss, moving BYU down to 12. I'm kind of with you on that, Caden. I think I want Oregon to beat USC, knock the Trojans out of it, and then I think the best case scenario, from my vantage point, Washington, the Huskies beat Oregon on the final weekend next week, thereby giving Oregon one of those bad losses that the playoff committee will have to consider ultimately, because Oregon has beaten nobody, everybody. I'm telling you. And Duck fans, if you're going to hop in my mentions, acknowledge a spade for a spade. What's your best win? BYU's got one that beats all of yours right now. That win over Utah, absolutely incredible that BYU has that in its back pocket. All right, Gilbert, why does Bear turn his back to the field when why does Bear turn his back to the field when the defense is on the field? Does it go beyond concentration? I do not have a good answer for you on that, Gilbert. I think it's more about he just goes over on the sideline and just kind of breaking into film review and the like, and maybe he likes to have his back to the field. Ronnie Mack, speaking of Ron McBride, for years refused to watch field goals. He couldn't do it. He'd literally turn around and wait for the reaction of the crowd. That's the thing. So, certain people have to deal with it in certain ways. Maybe that's just how Bear decided to operate. Maybe he doesn't like the distraction of seeing the action out on the field, helps him concentrate by having his back to it, but I do not know the answer to it straight up. Reagan, do you think BYU has a chance at the playoff without winning the conference championship game? I would like to think so. What I talked about earlier is that history suggests the conference championship game is not going to hurt you that bad if you are in position as an at-large team, but BYU needs to get in that at-large position. They got to move up from 11 to probably 9 or 10 to have a chance at it. Let's see. Also ask this. Who do you think we need to worry about transferring at the end of the season, and who should BYU look to lock up NIL-wise? It's a great question, and quite honestly, I have no idea who to consider at this point, because the transfer portal it makes no rhyme or reason. It feels like with certain players who will hop in and look for more money. BYU has money, absolutely has money. They have revenue share. They got NIL resources. They can make it worth guys' while to stick around at BYU. But also, how many guys are looking to leave BYU right now? They went 11-2 a season ago. They could go 12-1. Who knows what they could do this season if they win out? I'd be hard pressed to think a lot of guys, top tier guys at BYU are going to be looking to hit the open market, but maybe they are. But I don't really have any names that pop into mind right now on that. Dalton, who's going to be that one guy, the guy who people don't expect to have an impact, but they do, and who will that be for BYU against Cincinnati? Coming in from Dalton. Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, the guy you don't expect. I am going to say JoJo Phillips. How about that? JoJo's had some drops in the last couple of games. I think he has his best game to date, hopefully against Cincinnati. And really, his size to speed ratio is really unmatched in BYU's wide receiving core. And I think that he'd be a critical cog for BYU in this game. I guess the other name I'm going to pay attention to is a guy like Evan Johnson. Evan's been phenomenal all year long out there at cornerback for BYU. He'll be going up against guys like Caleb Goodie in this game. Comes with an interception or two. Could be the guy that helps BYU win this game as well. He also asked this: will Big Noon kickoff impact how the team approaches the game? No, they've already had Big Noon kickoff in Provo. They had College Game Day down in Lubbock. Nothing changes for BYU. I really don't think it's going to affect them at all. Michael, since losing Austin Gooseby in recruiting, I was wondering what other top high school prospects Kevin Young is pursuing. We may not get another AJ DeBonsa this year for BYU, but if BYU wants to continue to be a contender each year, it seems like they need to recruit at least one big recruit out of the high school ranks. Well, you can go on 24/7 Sports or on 3.com and look at who BYU has offered, Michael. But it seems like, from my vantage point, that BYU targeted Austin Gooseby as like the one guy they wanted out of this recruiting class. Now, could they circle back and find a guy or two that they're interested in? Absolutely. But it seemed like they had put all of their efforts into Gooseby. And when he picked Texas, I think the philosophy for BYU has changed now, where Kevin Young, he looks at the transfer portal essentially as free agency. And I know that sounds weird to say, but that's what it is now, everybody. It's free agency. You look at what players hop in the portal, what players fit your game model, what you like in terms of what you build your program as, and you go and sign them. It's like NBA free agency. That's how Kevin Young approaches it. So I actually think that BYU may not take another high school player in this class and probably looks at the international market for guys to come in, Africa, Europe, Asia. And then obviously he hits the transfer portal. I really do think that's kind of where their focus is right now. Does that mean they couldn't circle back, as I said, and find somebody? No, they absolutely could go out and find somebody, but I just don't see what they're going to do high school wise right now. Tyson, how many losses can the BYU basketball team take before we get too worried about the season? I want to say I'm not worried now, but what would the number start to be in terms of panic meter? Oof, I don't know, 5 or 6. I do think they'd have to have quite a few before I started fretting too much. Obviously, the injuries to Keba Keita and obviously the situation around Kennard Davis Jr., not ideal for BYU, but still the big three, as I'm calling them, Richie Saunders, AJ DeBonsa, and Rob Wright. And those three are very capable of leading this team. I really believe that. Let's see. Other questions coming in here. I'm probably not going to get to all of these, so I apologize for this. McCord, do you have any more information on why Sam Vanderhart didn't play last week? Well, he did play. He held for PATs, and he was legitimately injured. I can tell you that. He was legitimately injured, and they gave him a week off, and the expectation is he's going to be back punting tomorrow as well as his PAT duties. They gave Fuller Shirts the starting job last week to let Sam rest his leg, but PAT duty, you just kind of kneel down and you're holding that the ball. So I think he was capable. So he did participate, but he was legitimately injured, and the hope is he'll be back at full or close to full strength tomorrow against Cincinnati. Travis, why is BYU basketball playing at the Delta Center? Because they want to? I don't know. Contracts and programs like Wisconsin, they don't want to play BYU in Provo. So you tell them, hey, we'll play in Salt Lake City, which is 40 miles up the road. And it gives Cougar fans from Davis County, Salt Lake County, a chance to get a little closer to home in terms of games to watch BYU at. But one of the reasons for years also in early December, because I believe BYU plays Cal Baptist up in the Delta Center. It's like 1 or 2 weeks out. As they have the Around the World event where they have like that cultural event in the Marriott Center and that essentially boots BYU out of their home venue. And they've played that Delta Center game as a result because of that. Then I've kind of expanded that where they played the 3 games this year, the exhibition against North Carolina, the Wisconsin game later on this afternoon, and then obviously the Cal Baptist game coming up. Let's see here. Bear is ahead of schedule and exceeding all expectations. This comes from Chris. Do you think A-Rod should fully unleash the offense now, or is he keeping some of that playbook in his back pocket, either as disguise or wanting to see more from Bear? If Bear does not have the full playbook open to him at this point, Chris, I'd be absolutely stunned, because Kalani Sitake said it. They unleashed him last week against TCU. I think we all saw what Bear was capable of with a high-powered BYU offense doing what it did. If the offense is not fully open to Bear at this point, what are you waiting for? The kid's absolutely remarkable. I do think he's a phenomenal football player. Open it up, let him do his thing, and as the kids say, let him cook. I really do think he's that good. Let's see here. He also asked this. Which position group must absolutely win its matchup versus Cincinnati for BYU to win by 2 to 3 scores? Who has to lock it down? BYU's defensive line. They've got to do what they did against TCU and just absolutely batter the Cincinnati O-line. If they do that, BYU could run away with this one. I really believe that. If they make life difficult for Brendan Sorsby, getting pressure on him like they did against Josh Hoover a week ago, that's great. If guys like Keanu Tanavasa and John Talmoya-Peau hold down the middle and don't allow those rushing lanes to develop, yeah, BYU is going to have their way with Cincinnati, but the defensive line's got to back it up what they did a week ago. Let's see other questions here. Kent, is there any way that BYU can get any kind of respect from the national media? If we were undefeated, beat everybody 3 touchdowns, they think that would work. It's so frustrating to see them make excuses about us. They don't want to do the same thing to other teams. That's how it has been most of my life with BYU cheering. I guess we have to just deal with it. You do have to kind of deal with it. BYU, for whatever reason, is not the apple of many people's eye. And I think they did it in 1984, overcoming the odds to win a national championship. It may take that same type of thing for BYU to get that begrudging respect. But even then, remember, Brian Gumble, BYU, Bo Diddley. Yeah, that stuff will always exist around BYU, sadly. All right, see. Andy, maybe too early as of now, but there have been some good talents on emerging for BYU from their football program, especially on the defensive side. As it stands now with the transfer portal and newcomers coming in, what key positions from outgoing players you see being filled by up-and-comers? I'll just say defensive end. I talked about it last week. Nusi Talmoya-Peau, Hunter Clegg, Tausili Akana, Kinela Fonohema. Man, the defensive end unit for BYU, it's looking like it's going to be pretty spectacular if these guys continue on kind of the upward progression they're going on. I do think there's some young linebackers who have some promise. I think the offensive line's actually going to have some guys who are very capable of filling in for the guys who will be outgoing from this team. And so, yeah, I do think there's young talent already in the pipeline that BYU will utilize going forward here. Jordan, you may have already heard this, at least on YouTube TV, but the game is supposedly on the NBC Sports Network channel. I did learn that after I did the podcast yesterday. I said that the only way to watch BYU play against Wisconsin was on Peacock. Well, that was the deal, but just recently, NBCSN, which used to be a channel years and years ago, is now back on YouTube TV, and it's also going to be airing the BYU-Wisconsin game. So that may be one way to watch it if you're a YouTube TV subscriber like I am. So maybe for once, YouTube TV maybe save my bacon and a chance to watch BYU play, because I'm not going to lie, I was not willing to foot the bill for Peacock to watch just one game. That's just personal opinion on the matter. I was just going to listen to the radio call. I love what Greg Wrubell and Mark Duran do. So I'll be watching on NBCSN. So there you go. And then the final thing here for the questions in terms of sports, Parley on BYU Sports Nation, Sean Farnham was with them and saying that something about a guy that's 6'10" that BYU has. And he said they were talking about, maybe they were thinking about redshirting him, so they should play him. Who is he talking about? He's talking about Abdullah Ahmed, the big man they just committed, who picked BYU over Houston. He is going to enroll in January, much like KJ Perry is. And the thought was both of them were going to redshirt. Now, if Keba Keita is out for any significant period of time, well, a guy like Abdullah Ahmed could come in and offer depth at minimum for BYU on the front line. But he would not be able to play until BYU tips off Big 12 play, because it's when he'd be enrolling at BYU. So that should answer your question. Abdullah Ahmed, that's the guy they're talking about. All right. And then quickly, 2 off-the-cuff questions, if I can find them again here. Number 1, okay, here we go. Off-the-wall question from Kent. What is your favorite Christmas song if you have one? Whew, good question. I'll Be Home for Christmas by almost anybody who sings it. I love that song. It's one of my all-time favorites. I would say like Frank Sinatra's, like his entire Christmas, like all the Christmas songs that Frank Sinatra did was absolutely phenomenal. I love that. So yeah, that's probably my one. I'm thinking off the top of my head on that front. And then Zach asked this: what's your number one Thanksgiving dish? And if you don't say mashed potatoes, we can't be friends anymore. Zach, we're not going to be friends because here's the deal. Why do you need to ruin a perfectly good tomato by mashing it? Just saying. I love me a baked potato. I grew up, I'm a kid. My grandpa grew up in Idaho, so I am from Spud country, famous Idaho potatoes. You know that. But mashed potatoes, I'm out. I can't do it. I'm not a mashed potato fan. And my entire family, my wife, absolutely love them, but it's one of those things that I am not a mashed potato guy. So there you go. My number one thing on Thanksgiving dish, though, stuffing. I'm a big stuffing fan. I don't know. I love stuffing. I also love sour cream lemon pie and pumpkin pie. So, turkey. I guess this year for part of the holiday, my in-laws are gonna get brisket. So, I should be pretty good for Thanksgiving around the Hatch household. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Friday. Way over time. But as always, it's a pleasure to answer your questions. Like I said, you guys responded in mass, and I think I did my best. I think I got through almost every single one. If I didn't, I apologize. But there were, I don't even know how many questions we answered on that. But always fun to just talk shop. It really is a fun thing to do. So as always, please continue to subscribe, rate and review, share this with your family and friends, and make sure that when you're around the Thanksgiving table with your family and friends who may be Cougar fans, tell them about this podcast and have them download it and watch it every single day. All right, so enjoy the game. We'll be back tomorrow. Postcast immediately after this game goes final. We'll have plenty of coverage for you guys. That won't be immediately. I've got some radio responsibilities, but we will have a postcast. Trust me, we always do. Whether it's late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, we'll have it covered for you guys. And as always, thank you for being here on Locked On Cougars. And once again, being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.